122 million people have been forcibly displaced, according to the UN Refugee Agency. And this is as of June 2024. Now, what's crazy about this is more than the recorded estimate for the end of 2023. Friend of the show, Vladimir Putin, and he's wanted due to a really just violation regarding particularly the kids in Ukraine who were moved into Russia. Myanmar. And this is where conflict in this particular country has led to the forced removal of the, I'm going to try to pronounce this as the Rohingya, right? And this right here is essentially just the Islamist population. The last one I'm going to mention here is Gaza, right? And I mentioned this last because it kind of rolls into the lesson here. In terms of the Renaissance, we should really understand something. That Netanyahu, right, which is this is the prime minister or leader of Israel, and he is wanted and has arrest warrants out for him by the International Criminal Court for depriving Gaza people of food delivery and directing attacks towards civilians. What's happening now in terms of the international law, it's important that we understand we helped create these courts. We took part in the creation of these courts, but we were never members ourselves, right? I mean, it sounds like a pretty clear case of rules for thee but not rules for me type thing. our government and the population, the citizens, we've grown very far apart from each other in terms of the principles that we expect to govern our actions. One thing that I was really under the illusion of is that the UN were essentially the good guys. And it doesn't look like that's going to necessarily be the case. Like, we can just, there's some kind of moral authority that we can kind of hope and rely on with a lot of things. I think when it comes down to this idea of moving into the future, we have to start to build that and mold that for ourselves. These guys are getting like way out of control. Like, this is, it's not something that you can simply just stand back and ignore. We're essentially acting as if we're yelling that we're really a nation of free people, and we just look like psych patients to the rest of the world, right? Because it very much looks like we're being held hostage by our Pentagon. There's a true power in the advertisement of America, and despite us falling short, I want us to really understand and recognize the power in having a high ideal. Mega polluters are getting access to that, just that sweet green energy money. The article itself, it talks about pollution, but it really focuses on really specifically the problems of people reporting, or indie journalists reporting on what's happening. Essentially, defense for a lot of these guys is the paywall things, to where like only the people with money can get access to this. And if you have a lot of money, then chances are these are one of your friends you're trying to like snitch on, you know? Like, this problem, I think, is really speaking to something really revolving around the idea of banking, right? Because we've been losing a lot of community banks. And for those that don't know, community banks are much more likely to be guided by a sense of principles and morals and duty to really help communities. Large banks, I want you to picture going into one of these banks and trying to get a business loan. They have to do a very thorough evaluation, as you would rightfully assume, right? And with these particular banks, when it comes down to doing business with a lot of these mega polluters, I mean, a lot of the times, these aren't mega polluters to them. That's just, Jim who works for Exxon or who I think has quickly become our favorite dirtbag, and this is Elon and Tesla, right? And for those that don't know, Elon only survived by being government funded, right? Or Tesla, right? Tesla depends on the energy from coal and gas to recharge their car. sure that the taxpayers and the government, they never got a return from funding this clown. Just really good at being vampires. Like, we need to understand that. That's a lot. Well, that's what a lot of these companies come down to. This world would look completely different if just people were just reading all the time, right? But that's not the case. If you think about the movies, right, that are really in the future, right? These kids who may be like grade school age, they have knowledge that it's equal to doctorate level, right? And we're going to have to make strides in order to make that happen. That's not going to be necessarily dependent on how much information is available. A lot of us have grown really passive about understanding that, right? That understanding, because it's just like, yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, we like, it's a corrupt system, and we can't just have that understanding and hold that understanding without doing anything. This article talks about how like organizations, particularly ones investigating like humanitarian crimes, are often the targets of surveillance. If you think about Edward Snowden, that was a long time ago. In Gaza, they're actually they were reportedly targeting journalists, right? At some point, it was like Gaza was the most dangerous place for a journalist to be. And this idea of Israel and how it represses Palestinians, or how they repress Palestinians, this has been described in terms of in the form of really just a testing ground for the U.S. And there's nobody saying it's going to be easy, but it does get harder the more you pass it on to the next generation. It's not going to be something that is something that they can just, they just came together and finally realized, yeah. Probably not. The way the population just outright refuses to do anything about corruption, and they're thinking to themselves like, man, I can't do anything. I can't. I mean, because if I go to the public, there's nothing going to be done. Nothing's going to be done. It's just going to be, I'm just going to be one of those people at the Whistleblower Anonymous meetings that, that nothing happens for. Whole Foods has a palm scanner or something like that, and I was just like, that is it. Like, I remember seeing it and just thinking, like, I actually told the attendant who was watching, I was like, yo, that's creepy. But at some point, before I think I had talked to the attendant, I talked to somebody, a cashier, like, hey, what do you think, are these like, so you just hold your palm up, like, and I was gonna like start ragdoll, basically just ragdoll talking all types of trash about it, but the person, they said, yeah, they were excited. The cashier was excited. centering itself in people's lives, and that is not that I don't think we can necessarily see that immediate cause in terms of what's happening there and what that could lead to, and we should be more aware of it. Transformations to occur that allows for this next generation to grow up with a much more developed understanding of this world of signals and waves and data. And we have, right now, if we allow things to kind of go the way they are going, we have politicians that are being paid by big tech to keep their mouths shut about what big tech is doing. These guys, they apparently had this accident in India where all but one passenger was killed. Now, in terms of this report, it actually focuses on Boeing and how Boeing is cleaning up its act. And apparently, they're giving money to politicians. They've been one of the most active donors since 2008, actually. And they're growing ever close to our politicians in Washington. And this is becoming so significant, in fact, that their new headquarters is in Arlington, which is right outside of Washington. And this way, right, with this new headquarters that they're building in Arlington, they won't even have to risk getting on a plane to Washington. This is how civilians are becoming aware of the problems that are likely manifesting in really the big five defense contractors, right? Because these guys, they get taxpayer money without really having to uphold standards or compete with other people. And I know that many of us are thinking about those poor Africans, and not the ones in the Congo or Sudan. I'm talking about the indigenous white South Africans who are currently going through the most monstrous genocide. And this report talks about how governments all over the world, they may be following Elon's clown show and cutting back aid. It also reports on how more money is actually a direct cause to more efficient giving in a lot of these particular situations. For anyone wondering why some country in Africa is our problem and why we provide aid to them, you should really understand that without the IMF and the World Bank, these countries wouldn't destroy their land to provide crops to corporations, or just provide natural resources, I'll say, to corporations that sell to first world countries. Really need to come to an understanding that America and first world countries were actually welfare states. doing what he's doing because he needs to draw attention away from really the idea of him and his friends being the primary benefactors, in terms of government money, right? And being the primary sources of really the destruction that takes place across the rest of the world. We don't really know how tough it is to be rich, right? A lot of us, we see these guys buying up, entire islands, and we think, wow, it must be nice to have enough money to buy an entire floating landmass. But we really don't think, right? We don't think about what made them buy that island, right? So many of these people, they can't even look us in the eyes. And there's a lot of people out there that talk about how out of touch that these guys are, but do you think about how hard it is to fire everyone who dares to question you or your decisions? And just because all the servant schools do the best they can to make sure that us brokies know our place, that doesn't mean that we get it right all of the time. Just wanting to feed your poodle a braised steak like you do every night, and the butler has the nerve to look at you questioningly, or God forbid, complain about how he can't afford the meals that we give to rebels. People always talk about things like income inequality, but the bottom 50% of all households, I bet you didn't even know this, they hold an entire 1.5% of all of the wealth. An entire 1.5%. And I'm telling you, that's more than enough to eat cake every now and then. we need to be blessed to have these people ruling our economy. But in this Renaissance, I really want us to focus on how to relieve these people from their significant burden. In this video, they go over a few different situations, right? And situations that I think really shed some very important light on how we maybe could take things forward in this Renaissance. For those that don't know, our politicians abroad, they're basically like salespeople for Monsanto and, defense contractors basically. But also just the idea of Monsanto being on that list is crazy because I don't think a lot of people realize how just tech really got started, right? Because it has its roots in open source, right? It was just how things were. And for those interested, there's a book called The Friendly Orange Glow. Establish a culture that really prioritizes like innovation, then I think you'll consistently be a step ahead of anybody with the culture of simply patent something and take it off the market. When you talk about things like online gaming, when you talk about things like chat rooms, when you talk about things like online newsletters, these were propagating through this lab before the rest of the big tech companies got involved, like IBM, Microsoft. All of those people got really involved, and Apple got really involved. And the system was so amazing that essentially, like, businesses found out and they came in.